All right, so I think we'll get going. So this is the first workshop of the series for this semester. They'll be running same time, same day every other week. And the next couple of weeks, we've got Andrea from Pivomo. So if you'll be able to join us for that. But this week, very delighted to say we've got this careers workshop hosted with EconSoc. So we're going to be covering CVs, cover letters, interviews, and also the often undervalued LinkedIn. So we've got great people, range of backgrounds who have applied to different industries. In the interest of time, I think we'll leave the Q&A to the end, but do pop your questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So I think we'll kick off now, kick off with Harrison on CVs.
Sure, there we are. Right, okay, we're gonna keep it brief and we're gonna structure it with 4 keys. I think, CV should be structured, so we'll keep my presentation structured. Let's start off with number 1, structure. This is the first thing people are going to see. They pull up your CV and they see how it's laid out. It needs to be easy to read. It needs to be consistent across the typeface, so consistent fonts, consistent font sizes, spacing. All of this is very, very important. I would recommend font size 10 minimum. If it goes any smaller than that, recruiters are going to struggle to read it. I'd also recommend, at least for investment banking or consultancy jobs, Garamond and Book Antica are pretty strong fonts, as well as the basic things like Times New Roman as well. And another thing with structure is it needs to be chronological. So if you have experience working in a society, for example, and this is your most recent experience, that should be at the top for your leadership experience structure. In terms of how it should flow, you should have at the top your name, your contact details. So I put my mobile number, my LinkedIn, and my email address. I would leave the address. Normally when you're applying to a job, you're going to fill in the address on the actual form. So it just takes up unnecessary space. Then that's followed by education. You need the university, you need your relevant courses, and I would also say a grade or predicted grade, whatever you got, the previous year will do fine. Then it goes on to work experience. So this is things that you're being paid for, but if not being paid for, that's sort of the more relevant work experiences. Then leadership experience, this is where your societies go. So if you're a fresher rep, for example, this goes in there on a committee, or even if you're just involved with something like EconSoc with the IBC, they have a case competition. So you can put this in here and say what you pitched and your returns on it. Then finally at the bottom, you have your skills and interests. This is really, really important, but I'm going to touch on why a couple of points down. So that's the structure. For content, it needs to be concise. You only have one page, right? One page to show who you are, what you're about, why you deserve the job. So it needs to be super clean and you need to be able to read it really, really clearly. You need to list all the relevant jobs you have. It's not necessarily a quantity thing, but if you only have 2 positions on your entire CV, you're not going to stand out from other candidates. So it's just about getting loads of experience, trying out loads of different societies, internships, things like that, just making sure you're keeping it relevant to the role you're applying to. And you also need to limit the most important positions for the job. So for example, when I was in first year, in terms of finance experience, I hadn't really done much. I was quite lucky. I got a internship with a wealth management company, which was local to me. But in terms of actual experience, I only really worked in a coffee shop. So the coffee shop was top of my work experience in first year, but now I'm in third year. It's mentioned briefly at the bottom of my CV. It's no longer in the work experience because it's not relevant enough. So only list the most important positions that you have held before that are relevant to the job. And then finally, for content, you need to quantify. It's very, very easy to get lost in a CV. There's just so many words and it's very small, it's very compact. So if you put statistics in, so say you worked in a coffee shop, but whilst you're on shift, sales increased by 30%, get it in. It will definitely impress employers and it gives a tangible measure of your performance within the role. And this can apply to anything. If you're doing a stock pitch or something like that, you can measure the returns of when you pitch to what it is now. It's just a really easy way to show that you're fully conscious of the effect you have. Then the flow. You need to make the vibes right for the industry. So if you're applying to investment banking, it needs to look very clean, very professional. You want it to just be black and white. You don't want too much color on there. Where if you're applying for something like tech, you can make it a little bit more vibrant. You can play about with the fonts. You can maybe introduce a bit of color. I've seen a couple of people who have graphs and things on their on their CV. Definitely do not do this for banking, in my opinion. Others might say otherwise, but everyone I've talked to would just say super clear structure, with the consistent formatting and chronological order. Don't really play about too much. So this is very industry specific, but find the industry, find templates. There's the Wall Street Oasis, for example. Mergers and Inquisitions also has a very, very good template. Download that, and then you can adjust it to whatever you need and whatever your experience is. And then finally, for character, what defines you? The CV is an opportunity to tell a story, right? And interests really describe your character. So I definitely make sure at the bottom, you've got 3, 4, 5 lines indicating what you're interested in, what skills you have. Do you speak any languages? It could be even if you speak French at GCSE, but you haven't done it since, right? That's still intermediate French, in some regards. Don't say you're fluent. If you're not fluent, you will get caught out. But, you can introduce a little bit of you, what you do. If you play football for the university team, get it on there. If you bake cakes, get it on there. People just want to know you're human and you're not just a robot. You're not going to get there, sit at a desk and talk about absolutely nothing. Also, it's really useful for interviews. I am quite interested in this sort of hype culture. So things like Supreme, for example, I buy and sell that. And I had that on my CV. And when I interviewed for Rothschild & Co., the investment bank, I literally spent 20 minutes of my interview talking about Supreme and how you predict what's going to resell and, whether you can make money out of it. I did get asked whether if I was making a significant amount of money, would I rather do that or investment banking? That was a bit tricky, but prepare for it. Know your interests, know why they're relevant and why they matter to you. And yeah, just tell a story. So overall, I'd say that's the CV section.
All right, perfect. Blanka, over to you.
Okay, so in terms of cover letters, I've included like a little template there that you guys can see. I've just found this online and like edited a little bit to make it more relevant. But essentially from that, you can already see sort of the structure of a cover letter. I mean, the cover letter is meant to sort of expand on your CV. So you start off with why the company. This is the part that won't be transferable between your cover letters. So here, really try to focus on like, did you meet any interesting people from that firm that you really hit it off with, and interesting things about the company? Did you is there some particular aspect of the company that really stands out to you? Of course, sometimes there won't be, but really try to dig on their website, read their annual statement or whatever to try to find something. Say if you're interested in a particular sector, if they're like a leader in that sector, if you can bring in like an award they've won. I found that works pretty well. So that's the first paragraph. The second paragraph is about why the position. So why that specific job. So say if you're if you're applying to be an investment banker, then you have to sort of show why you're interested in finance, why particularly investment banking. That's what this paragraph is about. So you'll go into if you're in UTIC, say, or if you you were in the investment banking club or something like that. Of course, it depends on the position that you're applying for. So this is a paragraph that's relatively transferable between your cover letters. If you apply to the same position in many banks, then you can sort of use the same one. So it's quite good to just write a really good one, and then you save time when you're writing more and more cover letters. And then the last paragraph of the cover letter is why you. So it's similar to why the position, but it's more broad about sort of what particular skills you have that are more general. So for example, I would include like leadership experience or teamwork experience in general. That is important for the job, but I wouldn't include in the why the position paragraph. So that's the basic structure. I mean, I wouldn't be too creative with this. I guess, as Harrison said, if you're going into like non-investment banking or non-consulting, something like tech or I don't know, then maybe it's more lenient, but I would sort of stick with this structure of why the company, why the position, and why you. So just to expand on this, some do's and don'ts that I've included are that it's really nice if you do format your cover letter as an actual letter. This is the case if you're applying to a job where at the place you add your CV, they also have a place where you upload your cover letter. Then it makes sense to like upload a full document as a letter. If you're applying to like Goldman or like Bank of America, they have like a little box which just says explain why you want to apply here. It's sort of their version of a cover letter. Then maybe don't format as a letter, just go right into I was recently introduced to your firm or whatever. But if it's like attach your cover letter here as a full document, then I'd say format it as a letter. And then, as I said, in the first paragraph, it's really important that they see that you didn't just write the same cover letter for every firm, even if some parts of it will be, just reused in all of your cover letters. But try to, go to networking events so that you can bring it up in your cover letter. And then, dig deep in their website. If you can find something more than just like, oh, I really vibe with their culture, that would be good because like everyone can say that. So yeah, try to find something that stands out. Why are you interested in them in particular and not some other bank? And then some like more clear don'ts, I guess. Don't go over one page, definitely. I'd say like 3/4 of a page is definitely enough. It's just meant to expand on your CV. So you'll have most of your relevant experience already on your CV. So, the cover letter is just like an addition to that. And then, yeah, just as I said, don't use the same exact cover letter for all your applications, because you do have to sort of tailor them to the firm you're applying to, unlike maybe a CV. And then don't just list everything that's on your CV, because they're reading these two at the same time. Really highlight anything that's really relevant from your CV, and also if you can bring in like some other position or some other little smaller thing that you're involved in that's not on your CV, then add it here. For example, for me, an example of this was last year. I didn't put that I was in the M&A discussion group on my CV because it wasn't really a position everyone can join. There's no criteria to like get chosen. But I'd included it in my cover letter in my second paragraph of like why I'm interested in M&A. Like I've been interested from taking part in these discussion groups. So yeah, that's the basic of a cover letter. I think everyone hates cover letters, but once you sort of get the structure down, you get that second and third paragraph down, then just like tailoring the first paragraph gets relatively easy, and you get faster and faster with each cover letter. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Ben, if you're ready.
Yeah, hi everyone, good to meet you all, albeit virtually. I'm Ben, I'm a mechanical engineering student. So this summer I was a summer analyst at Goldman Sachs within global investment research, specifically within European automotive. So we're looking at very common household names, Volkswagen, Aston Martin, Lagonda, Ferrari, and basically coming up with theses as to why these companies were a buy, sell, or a hold. Were they a good investment or not, and for what reason? And a lot of that came through speaking with management and speaking to clients who are often hedge funds or pension funds. When you go into the interview process, all of that knowledge, if you're applying to investment research or if you're applying to investment banking that I've just relayed to you, you should already sort of know in your mind how that business unit works. So investment banking, investment research are very similar, but they do have their different nuances. And I think number one, like a big thing with interviews is nerves, and you can be a fantastic candidate, but be let down tremendously on the downside because you're nervous on the morning of the interview, and your thoughts don't come across 100% in the way that you expected them to do or to come across. And a really good way of getting around that is knowing who's going to be in front of you, not quite literally in terms of the person, but know what they do day to day. So if you're going into investment banking and you get into a room with an associate who's interviewing, you know that likelihood is that they're going to be running models on LBO, or they're going to be spreading comps, or they're going to be speaking to clients. So you can communicate without friction. And I think the second thing is also in terms of knowledge, go into that room or go into that virtual environment with everything you possibly need in your toolbox in terms of accounting knowledge and in terms of finance knowledge as well. This is something which is slightly tricky if you're not from a finance background. So I'm engineering. I know a couple of people also from the sciences who have managed to get in. And there's a common sort of misconception that if you're from one of these backgrounds, you don't have to know as much as, say, if you're working with an economics degree under your belt or in progress. The reality is you're expected to know a hell of a lot more than you think you are. So go in with that knowledge as well, and that will help to calm the nerves, and all these things could sort of collect together, I think, to give a really nice interview. And then the final thing is dress code and personality, and the two are sort of intertwined. So if you walk into a room, if one candidate walks into a room, he or she is dressed, okay, but hasn't made a real effort. That says two things. It says, okay, maybe they don't care about the dress or the way they dress, the way they're presenting themselves. But also that often sort of can reflect in someone's work. If you're formatting a spreadsheet and you're just like, okay, I'm just going to leave it at font size 10. I'm not gonna bold any of the titles. I'm not gonna double check that all of the formulas are correct. And as soon as someone hits run, it's not gonna just hashtag ref. That is often reflected in attention to detail, and it can come across in the way you walk into a room in terms of dress code. So just keep everything nice and simple, keep everything nice and clean, especially on Zoom. I think the key with it is to be very comfortable in what you're wearing. So when you're sitting down, whether it's a higher view or whether it's a face-to-face like we're doing now, you are just super comfortable, but you also come across well as well. If this was in a non-Zoom world, so maybe for those people who are going to be interviewing in 2021, the final piece of advice I'd give would be to go on Google Maps before your interview, and find out where the building is, how you're going to get there in the morning, stuff like that. So when the morning of the interview comes at 7 a.m., you're on the tube in London or whichever city you're interviewing in, it's all very natural. And so again, it's all about reducing the friction and reducing the chance for things to go wrong. So when you get to the point that you walk into that interview room, you're super confident, and all that's on your mind is technical content, personality, and coming across in a very good manner. I specifically wanted to keep these super general, but at the end, if there are any questions specifically with Goldman or with any of the other banks, I'll be happy to answer those more specifically.
All right, perfect. Thanks a lot. So I think next we've got Bryan. If I stop screen sharing, I think he's going to load up on his screen.
Perfect. Yep. Right. Let me find the right tab. Two seconds. There we go. Right. You guys see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Cool. So LinkedIn, this is the fun part. This is where you get to be kind of free and kind of express yourselves. I've actually had a few interesting conversations about LinkedIn with a few recruiters over the summer. And one of the things that they tell me is that more and more you'll see companies as they hire, like attach an option on their application pages to link your LinkedIn, and they'll kind of use that alongside your CV, alongside your cover letter, to kind of get a feel for who you are. So I guess we'll just get started with the basics, and then I'll tell you a few fun tidbits about LinkedIn as I go. But first off, LinkedIn gets often kind of mischaracterized as this space where you're basically flexing on all of your friends. That's not what it's for. Although, I mean, I guess you kind of have that aspect too. But no, what it's actually for is to kind of just list, I guess, in a CV way, your experiences, kind of have more options to expand things and kind of connect with people who I guess you know and people who you want to know. So yeah, we'll get started. The first kind of tagline here is right here, under your name, full name, and then in parentheses, you can put what you want to be called by if you have a nickname. And the tagline is quite important, right? So this is the first thing kind of they see after your name. So it should be quite short. Don't list all of the positions that you hold. Don't list kind of everything you've ever done. Just kind of a one and maybe max two kind of positions you hold at any one given time that you think is kind of most important. And if that's a student at Edinburgh University, that's perfect as well. So I've had that for quite a long time, the student bit. And then, oh yeah, profile picture. So make sure you have a decent headshot. That means no looking off into the side, no candids. And if you do have kind of a business style picture, that's probably best. So if you have something where you're wearing a suit for a guy or kind of like a nice dress for a girl, then yeah, that's perfectly fine. And the kind of cover picture here, you want something kind of that reflects the city you're in. So that's what I've been told is kind of having, if you're based in Edinburgh, like the Edinburgh skyline, cool picture of that works. Nothing too crazy, nothing too artistic, should be fine, right? Okay, so let's go into your description, the about. So generally, you want to put kind of, I guess, your university, your year, what you study as the very, very basic part of it. And then after that, you can include kind of your interests. So I've got mine quite simple right now. If you're looking for a role, then say that you're interested in a role in, for example, like investment banking, or you're interested in a role in management consultancies. And then you can kind of list that, and then employers can kind of find you that way as well. Featured posts are quite good. So if you do a lot of kind of sharing, then this is something you can kind of utilize to, I guess, highlight whatever one that you feel is kind of necessary. Right, so experiences. Again, two schools of thought on this. The first one is that you should leave it very, very simple. That's what I've kind of gone for. So list of your roles. Obviously, they'll kind of rank it in order from kind of most recent to least recent. And unlike your CV, you can put, I guess, like every kind of business related role that you might have ever held on here. That's not a problem. I guess the other school of thought on this is that you want to put like detailed descriptions. So obviously, if your CV is kind of a bit tight and you don't necessarily feel like you've expressed everything that you want to in your CV, then you can include that under your roles as like a role description of what you've done. Harrison's done a really good job of kind of going through what a CV should look like. So don't necessarily just copy that, but if you have something kind of to add to it, obviously numbers are really good. So if you've, for example, increased engagement in whatever society you're in by X%, then do highlight that, and kind of what you've learned as well. So anything you have taken away. So either is fine. I've just chosen to keep mine kind of simple, and then kind of from most recent to least recent. And then obviously your education as well. Under education, you can kind of put what you've been involved in. So if you're kind of a regular member at a society, but don't necessarily hold a committee role, this is kind of where you can say under the University of Edinburgh, member of, I don't know, EntSoc, EconSoc, etc. Skills and endorsements. Again, kind of two ways of thinking about this. One group says that these are kind of really important for employers looking on LinkedIn. So it's kind of necessarily like the more endorsements that you have, the better. But then again, that kind of turns into like endorse for endorse, right? So it's like you get a big group of friends and sit down and just click endorse on everyone's skill at any one given time. And obviously that kind of devalues it, but it's up to you. If you feel like you're actively looking for a job on LinkedIn, then fair enough, by all means, get all your friends, get your family, get them to endorse, and then kind of, you can write recommendations as well. So unlucky, I've received none, but I think that's okay. It's not necessary, but you know, it's not something bad you have. Honors and awards, obviously, whatever you guys have earned throughout your course at university and school. And then interests, obviously, this is kind of what you like, what you follow. So I follow a lot of kind of consulting based things because that's kind of my area of interest. So that'll show up for other people as you kind of go through. Yeah, so I guess that's basically it for LinkedIn. More and more, you have people actually looking for jobs on LinkedIn. It's not quite common with us university students. I feel like it's more common in the professional sphere. But for example, if you've graduated and are looking for a job, LinkedIn's a great way to find that. So you can reach out to recruiters, employers, and kind of have little coffee chats. Common mistakes I think I'll go through next. One is just connecting to literally everyone. That's not, it feels like a good thing at first. You're like, right, the more connections you have, the better, right? And that doesn't necessarily end up being the case because it's quite, like, you'll get to a point where you have like thousands of connections and you're just like, right, most of these people I don't know, most of these people I won't know, and there just really isn't any value in those connections. So only add people that you know or you are contacting for a specific reason. And that specific reason is generally for people, alumni generally, or people in the same university that you want to reach out to and get advice from. Then you can kind of send them a quick note and say, hey, I found your profile. I'm interested in the same kind of field that you're in. And I think that having a coffee chat with you would be really good for kind of my career. Would you mind taking 20 minutes out of your day to kind of just chat through your role and kind of what you've done to get there? And that's a really good way of building connections. So I've actually had a lot of that this summer, just kind of talking to people I've not met and kind of all over the place. But at the same time, it builds like kind of, I guess, a little mentorship relationship. So mentorship relationship, that's a bit odd. No, but like a mentoring relationship. So these people who you talk to often will kind of become invested in you and kind of want to see you do well. So if you do end up building those relationships, I'd suggest you follow up on those quite often. So say like every month or so, or if you've kind of accomplished something good recently, then shoot them a quick little message saying, oh, by the way, like I was able to secure this role. Thank you so much for your help. And that obviously kind of deepens the relationship and makes it really easy for you to connect to people in the professional sphere when you enter it. And yeah, I think that might be it. Oh, hold on, one more thing. Yeah, so I guess LinkedIn recruiters these days do kind of search you up in the way that, you know, you've all heard the horror stories of companies looking at your Facebook pages and finding, you know, illicit things and retracting offers. So do make sure that your LinkedIn is kept clean, it's kept professional. Don't comment random stuff on your friends' pages. It does pop up on your feed. So, you know, if you want to drive engagement with your friends, then sure, by all means, comment a simple like congrats. If you're being cheeky about it, congrats, let's catch up for a coffee sometime soon. But don't, you know, comment like, oh, well done, you absolute geezer, anything like that. You don't want to do that. That's bad. They'll find it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you've got any questions on LinkedIn or just career stuff in general or consulting, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have a chat. And just kind of attach a little note to it. I've actually been quite bad with just kind of responding to network requests recently. So if you do attach a note, I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks, guys.
All right, great. So I think at this point, we'll open it up to a Q&A. We've already had some questions coming through. So the first one is, as a non-finance student, how do we prepare for the interviews and learn financial skills? For example, reducing financial rejections. I think Ben, you don't do a finance related degree, and
yeah, sure, yeah. I'm engineering, so I can take this one. I think it's a really good question to start with. I think the key to it is, I think Harrison touched on this earlier as well, is just use your resources. So if you have a pen and paper, the top one I'd use is Wall Street Oasis, for just reading on forums about valuation. And I'm sure they have like a technical interview guide as well, with a list of about 50 questions. And they're sort of transferable across most front office roles in an investment bank. So it's your classics, DCFs, your merger models, your LBO models, your spreading comps, your knowledge of price to earnings ratios and things like that. So to summarize, just go onto Google, type in Wall Street Oasis, or even type in just investment banking interview prep. And I think somewhere on there should be a PDF with a bunch of questions. And the key to not giving up on those, on our last point, is just to basically drown yourself in them. Be comfortable with the fact that if you're from a non-finance background, you're probably not going to understand them straight away, but also be comfortable with the fact that if you're from a non-finance background and it's STEM or it's the arts or humanities or something, you are equally as intelligent and have an equal ability to understand that information incredibly quickly. And if you combine those two things together and just keep at it, you will get there if you want to get there. It just takes some sort of practice, especially with valuation, and focus on when you do practice, trying to genuinely understand the concepts behind it. Doesn't matter if you understand it in a lot of depth, but just try to get that surface level understanding before anything else, and then just build and build and build at a comfortable rate for you. I hope that helps.
Yeah. So Malik is asking, where's a good place to find background pictures for LinkedIn?
Right. I'm assuming you mean like the cover pic, right? So for those, a generic stock image, honestly, if you go on, say, like Pexels or what's the other one, like Adobe stock photos, and find like a nice little background picture of whatever city you're from, you'll generally find quite a bit. And then obviously it's quite a narrow picture, so make sure it like actually shows up nicely and isn't kind of like just the meadows, for example. So yeah, Pexels, Google Images. I'm not sure if you can use Google Images. I don't think it's an issue necessarily. But yeah, just to be safe, go with Pexels. Pexels is really good.
All right. So Domenico asks, what's the best way to prepare for HireViews? I believe HireViews is the video interview system, which is becoming increasingly used. Don't know who wants to take that, who's got most experience of video interviews.
I can take this one again. So I'd say that it varies across bank in terms of the type of questions they're going to ask you. So I can start off right off the bat by saying that at GS, they're going to focus more on the behavioral aspects than the technical aspects. Your JP Morgans or your Morgan Stanleys, from my experience, they've tended to focus or be more skewed towards technical aspects, and also sort of general knowledge of what's going on in the world of finance, and if it's investment banking, what's going on in the world of finance, but specifically investment banking. So have you heard of a merger deal which has gone through, or what is happening in terms of on the private equity side in terms of deal flow because of COVID? Has it ramped up or is it ramped down? So things like that for JP and Morgan Stanley. But I guess one of the main things you want to do for HireViews is get really comfortable with speaking with the camera, and it's incredibly hard to do. Like, I'm not 100% with it. I've been working from home for like the past 8 months. So in order to practice, I'd literally just get a webcam and speak to your lecturers, organize Teams meetings with your lecturers, and just have your camera on, have them have their camera on, and just talk about your subject. Doesn't matter what your conversation topic is. It's just the fact that you're speaking to someone, connecting with someone over the camera. So cut your teeth on that before you cut your teeth, or before you're put in front of someone who's making a hiring decision. Make sure your background is relatively clear, nothing distracting. And if you're in a shared flat, make sure your flatmates know that at this specific time you're having a higher view, and so don't burst in the door behind you. And then I also would just be super authentic. So if you slip up, which is perfectly plausible, just take a second and just try and be humble and sort of humor it, but then just very quickly just get yourself back into the game and continue on the path you were going. The worst thing you can do in a situation such as a high view where it's super high intensity, it's super stressful, you have 2 minutes and that's it, is to sort of BS your way through and to just make up random answers that you think sounds about right, but you're not 100% certain of. If you're not unsure of something in the heat of the moment, say, look, honestly, I don't know the answer to it or to the question, but given this and this would be my best educated guess. I'm more than happy to get back to you if I progress to the later stages and have a further conversation about it. That's much better than just waffling your way through until the timer runs out. At which point you've added no value, you've just subtracted value from your application. Hope that helps.
Just going to build on that as well. It can be very, very tempting to have your notes there and read off of them. Try to avoid this because higher views, generally speaking, they are looking for eye contact. It does want to be like a conversation. So if you're constantly looking down to read something, that's time away from looking at the camera. So yeah, I definitely agree with Ben. Be able to have a narrative, make sure you're actually saying something of substance. Just don't read it off of it, because you're going to lose character as well. It's not only just you're looking away, you're not going to be as authentic. The career service is very, very good. They offer, I believe, 2 video interviews for each student. So make sure you utilize that, especially if you get a video interview, it's coming up. Just take the video interview with the career service. It's fantastic practice, and it's a really easy way to improve your performance.
All right, so our next question concerns tech jobs in investment banks. So if you're going for a tech job, should you also have the finance skills to back this up if you're aiming to work in an investment bank? Don't know who wants to take this.
Short answer is no, but you should know what the bank does. So I'm assuming by tech, you mean sort of engineering software side. Know what the bank does, know what a bank is at a very high level. But the key for like engineering roles in investment banks is to ace the coding part of the interview. And a fantastic resource that I can recommend is HackerRank, which is what GS use for their engineering coding tests, and just get super fluent in knowing your different coding sort of structures. Just stick to one. If you're coding in Python, keep on coding in Python. There's no need to change. If you're coding in C++ and that's what you've been doing, no need to change. But just make sure you're super fluent on that. Don't worry at all about what a DCF model is. That's not what they're hiring you for. No one on your team is going to be asking you to value something. They're hiring you because you are competent at software engineering or at tech. So don't worry at all. But do worry about your competency in your ability to execute good code, because obviously that is super important.
All right, great. So Harrison, this is a perfect question for you. So Manon's seen a couple of sample CVs with a profile summary section at the top. Do you think this is a good idea or not so much?
This is a tricky one. It really, really depends on what you're applying to. As I said before, tailor your CV to the role. Okay. If you're applying to an investment bank, it's very, very difficult to summarize your personality in 3 sentences, for example. But it's a lot easier to do it by breaking it into bullet points, saying these are my interests. And then when you get to the interview stage, you can start to explore them. You're not going to have this opportunity with an intro. So personally, I wouldn't use that. I think the space is better used perhaps further down the CV. You can add another bullet point to your experience. You can add a couple more interests. these are more space efficient ways to do it. And at the end of the day, the CV is a concise overview of who you are. And I think that by introducing sentences, it's not, well, I mean, of course you can have sentences in your experience section, but by having a formal introduction, it's not going to be the most effective way to input data. But I mean, the others, I'm sure, might have an opinion on it.
Actually, I've talked to a few recruiters who fall into the absolutely not camp. So like, just don't. They don't really want to read it. On average, a recruiter will look at your CV for like 30 seconds. And if you have 30 seconds to essentially impress them, right? So if you spend kind of the first 10 seconds on an introduction that will tell them really nothing more than they'll find in your cover letter in much greater detail, or for example, like in an interview, then there's really no point to kind of including that. Like Harrison said, like there's like everyone's cramped for space in their CVs anyway. There's only like so small a font can go without it being illegible. So you might just as well like take those couple lines out, add in an extra interest, expand on one of your experiences a bit more.
Yeah, so Zoe's asking, when's the best time to begin submitting applications for internships and how many is it worth sending out? And maybe Blanka, if you'd want to jump on this one.
Sure. So if you're applying to spring weeks, I think they've maybe been open for like a week or two. And all of these applications are on a rolling basis. So really apply as soon as possible because you have a higher chance of getting it if you apply earlier. And then internships, summer internships, they've been open for even longer, like some opened in like July. So definitely get onto that. Again, those are on a rolling basis as well. So it makes your life a lot easier if you get them out of the way really fast. And it increases your chances. So yeah, as soon as possible.
Also, just kind of expanding on that, some firms have different periods where they open internships and where they close, right? So banking opens quite early, consulting summer internships don't really open until, I want to say January for summer internships and kind of October-ish for the grad roles, or September, October for the grad roles. So do make sure that you actually kind of look at each company's page and see when their application deadlines are, when they open. Some of them will be rolling. The rolling ones you want to apply faster because they'll just pick out of the bunch. Whereas for some, it might be worth taking some more time to, I guess, refine your application, just because they'll take the entirety of everyone's applications and go through them at once, once the deadline's up. I guess the second part of the question, how many is it worth sending out? So I know people that have done up to 38 internship applications. That's the classic spray and pray approach. And it's kind of up to you, right? So you can kind of, if you have the time to, I guess, like, do 38 separate applications and tailor your cover letters to each one of them and kind of go through that, then by all means. But like I was a bit shaky on a lot of the internship stuff. I didn't really apply until late. So I applied to 5 consulting firms altogether. So that's much more kind of a small amount, which means you can spend more time like actually researching the company, talking to consultants from that company and kind of getting a better sense of what they do, their values, things like that. So I guess it is really up to you, but maybe a in-between approach where you have like 10 to 15 applications, I think is quite normal. And then you can go from there. Obviously, if you get a nice and early kind of acceptance, then you can kind of take that and chill out for the rest of the time. But if not, you might have to keep going.
So we've got a question from Bartos asking, I think this is for you again, Brian. Is it better to have a weak LinkedIn or just not have a LinkedIn at all?
I'd say a weak LinkedIn. Like if you're kind of in your early stages of university, then companies aren't expecting you to have like loads of extracurriculars and loads of kind of positions to hold already. So just kind of start building your network. I think that's what you focus on if you don't have that many experiences to put on. Focus on kind of the personal relationships and kind of, I guess, just expanding your network and kind of making sure that you're adding as you go, and just kind of make it clean, make it tailored. That should be fine.
Right. So Shannon's asking about if there's any documents we can share to help Guy in terms of investment banking, or if there's anywhere to upload resources. I know, Ben, you've stuck a link in there. I think that's definitely worth looking at. I think I'd add as well, if you're looking particularly for guides on CV, cover letters, these sort of events, or even sort of sending your documents to people that you know have been through the process and they can give you feedback, I think that can really be the most valuable thing. I know IBC offers a service such as that. But yeah, it's all about sort of who you know. I'm not sure if the guides are worth it. I haven't used any. I don't know if anyone's tried. But yeah.
Quick plug, EconSoc does 50% off if you, for Wall Street guides. So if you want to pick one up, do it. But yeah, I agree with Lewis. Like, it's not absolutely necessary, honestly. If you think they'd help, go for it. But in general, most of the people I've met in the industries like haven't used like a pay for service. They've kind of just gone on their own and kind of located resources on their own. And I think that also builds like a nicer kind of skill set and more well-rounded skill set if you do it kind of organically rather than trying to cram everything from a guide that some places put up.
Right, so I think that's the end of the question. So I think if there's no more, I think we'll conclude tonight's session. So thanks everyone for joining, and obviously thank you to everyone that's led and hosted and given advice and their experience. We'll be uploading the slides, so make sure to like our Facebook page so you get updates on future events, so you can see when these slides are uploaded. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you all at the next event. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks guys.
Thank you. Don't forget, you can always connect with us as well. If you have any questions, send us a DM. I know Bryan was saying LinkedIn. You know, we're going to be using these platforms as well, so just reach out.